I'd like to call this meeting of the Peoria Planning and Zoning Commission to order. First off, I want to welcome everybody who's attending today. We appreciate that, those of you who are here in person. I also want to welcome those who may be watching on our Peoria Channel 11 or who may be viewing this on our website at peoriaaz.gov, a little plug for our website there. And I feel it's only fair to warn all of you that this is my first time chairing the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, so it could get a little bumpy, but I'll do my best. And I know staff will keep me in line, our attorney will keep me in line, and my fellow commissioners will. So we should be okay. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into tonight's agenda and kick things off with a roll call, please. I'm going to go ahead and call off your names and tell me if you're present. Commissioner Brian Patterson.
Present.
Commissioner Sean Hutchinson. Absent. Commissioner Bill Lewis.
Here.
Commissioner Jay Outluski.
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell Bolnick.
Here.
And alternate Commissioner Clay Alsop. Here. Welcome. Commissioner Lee Strickman is absent tonight, and I, Commissioner Jeff Nelson, am present. I'm going to start with an opening statement, if I may. The Planning and Zoning Commission is composed of Peoria citizens who have been appointed to the City Council to serve on the Commission as a civic responsibility without compensation. Our duty is to study and review planning and zoning issues within the City of Peoria and to forward our recommendations to the City Council. All hearings are conducted in accordance with the rules for procedures and Robert's Rules of Order. Each case will be called in the order in which it appears on the agenda unless otherwise announced during the meeting. In the interest of maintaining a fair and efficient hearing, the Commission adheres to the following steps. Chairperson calls the case. Staff gives a brief report and recommendation. The applicant is invited to give a presentation. Opposition, and support gives testimony, generally limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The applicant may give a rebuttal, and the Commission then will discuss and decide. Anyone wishing to speak must complete a speaker's request form and hand it to the planning assistant on my left over here. We ask that you please be as brief as possible and avoid repeating statements already made by others. Anyone wishing to protest the decision of a Commission public hearing item must request a second public hearing before the City Council. The request must be submitted in writing to the Peoria Planning and Community Development Department within 10 days of the Commission's hearing. All Commission recommendations on public hearing items move forward to a regular City Council meeting. The City Council will then act on the recommendation of the Commission. They may concur with our decision, modify it, or they can overturn it. We welcome and encourage citizens' comments, and as fellow citizens of Peoria, we thank you in advance for your participation. So this is the final call to submit speaker request forms. If anyone wishes to speak, again, please fill out a speaker request form and provide to staff seated to my left at the end of the dais. Next up is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is for items that are routine in nature and consists of 4 items tonight. Item 1C, disposition of absence. Discussion and possible action to approve and excuse the absence of Commissioner Bill Lewis from the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on December 15, 2016. Item 2C, the minutes. Discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on December 15, 2016. Item 3C, Precision Fleet Services, a request for a conditional use permit to allow the conversion of a 4.6-acre site, including an existing 81,662 square foot building, into an automobile dealership. The operation would occur on a site zone light industrial located at 10857 North 95th Avenue here in Peoria. And the last of our consent agenda items is item 4C, case number CU16-0028, Peoria Kia. This is a request for a conditional use permit to allow the remaining undeveloped portion of a multi-building office complex to be converted into a new vehicle storage lot for Peoria Kia. The site is located to the west of 88th Drive and south of Kelton Lane. Do any commissioners have any questions and or comments? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Lusky. All right, go ahead and vote, please. And it's unanimous. Well, ladies and gentlemen, so good So far, so good, that is. All right. We're now going to move on to new business. The first agenda item under new business is 5R, and that's case number CU15-0015, Zion Ministries and Daycare. Staff, please present your report.
Good evening, members of Commission. My name is Randy Proch. I'll be presenting tonight's item 5R, CU15-0015. This is Zion Ministries and Daycare, a conditional use permit request. The applicant for this request is Dr. Madeline Akers. She represents Zion Ministries. The request this evening is to obtain a conditional use permit to allow a daycare center use within an existing single-family house. The house itself is approximately 2,823 square feet. The daycare portion of that house utilized is only 1,837 square feet. This project is located east of 77th Avenue on Acoma Drive. The subject site, a house, was originally constructed as, again, a single-family home and is currently utilized only as a church and accessory daycare use. The church operates Sunday mornings for service and has a Friday evening Bible study. The daycare is a Monday through Friday operation and does not overlap with the church use. They are independent. The applicant originally applied for a site plan and conditional use permit back in 2011 that for the same proposal of a daycare center. This was withdrawn in 2015 after 3 reviews. At the time, the architect did not have an architect on board to help address all the red line comments, so this case basically started anew in 2015. During that time, it was determined that the daycare center operation was still being done. That's a daycare that's over 4 participants. At that time, it became a code compliance case. The site is zoned R118, which does allow a daycare center use with approval of a CUP. Directly across the street, including Acoma Drive, is located in Maricopa County and is zoned RU43. To the south is R112, a few more homes on large lots, and to the east is a wholesale nursery that is not open to the public. We received our new submittals for the site plan and conditional use permit late last year in September and October. Now, this daycare center use can exceed 4 children after the CUP has been approved, if that is the Commission's decision, as well as all related building permits, inspections have been finalized. This site does require a number of enhancements that aren't currently present at the site, including driveway modifications, construction of a parking lot, a new septic tank, fire hydrant, and fire sprinklers within the building before it can again exceed. This is basically step 1 of the process to get the site into conformance. Again, this daycare center use is only Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in line with the standards set forth in the zoning ordinance. Outdoor activity will only occur between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. I have highlighted the area of play equipment, which is located fairly far away from any other single-family homes to the south and the east. Now, the daycare center shall not exceed a maximum occupancy of 39 children, or as otherwise approved by the State of Arizona Licensing Authority. What this means is the city does not have any standards about maximum capacity based on size. That is handled through the Department of Health Services, who is the licensing board for daycare centers. Based on the square footage of the daycare use, that 1837 number I gave you earlier, minus bathrooms, hallways, the kitchen area, basically what that equates to is 1,365 square feet of classroom space for the care of children. That divided by DHS number of 35 square feet per participant comes with a 39 children maximum capacity. At this time, the applicant does not feel as though they would ever exceed around 20 children. Notice of application and notice of hearing postcards were mailed to residents within the 600-foot radius and HOAs within 1 mile. The site was posted by the applicant in accordance with our city requirements, and 1 email of opposition has been received since the initial submittal of September of 2015. That email was received after the initial 21 days, which requires a neighborhood meeting. Therefore, a neighborhood meeting was not held and not required. This letter was general in nature, just pretty vague as far as a specific concern. It wasn't anything to do with the daycare center itself. It was to do with any commercial businesses being on a common drive, a general. Now, for our key findings, the request is consistent with the requirements as set forth in the single-family residential standards of the zoning ordinance, and it is compatible with surrounding uses. This use, in conjunction with the conditions of approval as outlined in the staff report, will operate in a manner that will not negatively affect the adjoining uses. Again, we've only received 1 email in about 14, 15 months now. Now, this applicant has submitted a signed and notarized Prop 207 waiver, which will be recorded with the conditions outlined in the staff report. Our recommendation for you this evening is to approve case CU 15-0015, again, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. With that, I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Proch. Appreciate that. Do any commissioners have any questions of Mr. Proch? Oh, sorry, I need to look at my screen here. See my first flub. All right, Commissioner Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one question on the conditions. Condition number 2. It says the daycare center may be operated in conjunction with the primary use of the building as a religious facility. The daycare shall not operate as an independent facility. What does that mean?
Commissioner Lewis, thank you. With a daycare center in a single-family residential zone, it does require a principal use to be present on the site. The daycare center can be a conditional use that is in conjunction with a principal use. The daycare center itself couldn't be the principal use. The church, in this case, is the principal use that the daycare center can attach with.
Okay, so the church has to be sustained first. They can't close down the church and continue to run the daycare
That's
center,
correct.
correct? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Commissioner Bolnick, you're next.
Thank you, Chairman. Going down the same path, I'm going to ask a couple questions, and then because they're kind of all related. So I'm curious how many kids they have right now. And the primary use, to me, what defines primary use? Because it appears to me that the church is only there a short period of time, and if they're doing daycare, that seems to me that's almost every day, and it appears to me the primary use is the daycare. What defines that for me? And then in that, and maybe this is part of the definition, you called it accessory daycare use currently. I don't quite understand what accessory daycare use is, so I think they're all related, so maybe you could just throw it all into one answer for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Bolnick. Currently, the site is only allowed to have 4 children.
Right.
That is what's tied in with the accessory daycare use. Anyone could have an accessory daycare use in their homes with only 4 children, hence the current standard of an accessory use with 4 as the maximum. Now, the primary use is viewed for the church because the church has always existed. So the daycare came along after the fact of the church. The church is what started the operation in that single-family house. It will continue to operate after the fact.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. Is a church is for nonprofit? Is the daycare nonprofit? Is the daycare for profit?
I would have to refer you to the applicant to answer that first particular question.
Thank you.
Is that all you had for your questions? Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Bolnick. Chair recognizes Commissioner Otluski.
Yeah, quick question, Randy. The parking for that, if we're looking up to 39 kids, you're talking about 39 vehicles coming in and out twice a day. And you mentioned in the beginning of that they were going to add on parking, but I didn't really see the spot for that.
Commissioner Otluski, thank you. Our current standard for daycare centers is 1 space per 400 square feet of daycare center. According to our Peoria zoning ordinance, that would only require 5 spaces, which seems shockingly low for a daycare. However, this daycare, like many others, is drop-in and pick-up throughout the day. There isn't a start time or end time. It is available 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., come as you go. It is something we've thought about with this case as far as a future amendment for daycare centers. You know, this one's particular because it's not typical that they're in a single-family residential zoning district. Again, this process started in 2011. The daycare has existed in some capacity, you know, around the 4 children as allowed as an accessory use since that time, and we have not had any complaints or concerns about an abundance of cars being parked.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Otluski. We'll come back around to you, Commissioner Bolnick, if that's okay. Commissioner Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I live in a house about this size, and the thought of 39 kids and the parents coming in, picking them up and leaving, and I have a hard time envisioning that this would be a workable number of 39. I think your applicant has said that 20 was a likely maximum for this operation, and personally, that sounds like a more realistic and reasonable number than 39. I'm just curious if that is something that's negotiable with the applicant to limit that to something more in the range of 20 children.
Commissioner Patterson, I would defer to the applicant for that question. We can get that to weigh in.
And just if I can add, Commissioner Patterson and members of the commission, if that is something of interest as we deliberate and discuss the case, certainly that could be something that could be a topic of an amendment in terms of one of the stipulations that's been presented tonight.
Oh, thank you. In looking at the aerial photograph, you can see already there's probably 10 cars parked on the site, and several of them are parked behind each other, and I could see that being even worse if you had 39 kids there in any given day, of people getting blocked in and fighting for a space.
Commissioner Patterson, just to clear up the concern for the double stacking, the parking lot, when constructed, would not allow that. It would be single loaded to prevent that.
Does that help? All right, thank you. Commissioner Bolnick?
I don't think I got a complete answer. The 20 makes sense to me, but how many, I know they currently allowed for, but they had more. How many have been operating with since 2011?
Commissioner Bolnick, as far as the city knows, there's only been 4 children at any time. This did go to the code compliance to ensure that that number was at maximum 4 children as we've gone through this process. Again, the CUP is just step 1. It would require all the building permits to be submitted, constructed, and finalized with a new CFO to ever exceed that number.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners have any questions? Hearing none. Is the applicant, I'm sorry, we need to open the public hearing. I've opened the public hearing. Is the applicant present tonight? And do you wish to speak? Yes. I'm sorry, no worries. Come on up and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Rick Moore. I'm with RMA Design Group. We're the architect for Pastor Acres. My address is 5815 North Black Canyon Highway, Phoenix 85018. I don't know that I have much to add to Randy's presentation, but I would like to try and clear up a number of things. Number one, and I didn't mean when we prepared the drawings for the population of 39 to be misleading. The reason we listed that number is that's what we were told by the county health department was the maximum population that we would allow. I probably should have added some notes on there that that was not what was intended, but that's what we could in fact, have there. But I think if we need to lower that number, that certainly the applicant has no trouble with that. And to answer the gentleman's question about the accessory use, if you are you clear with everything? Okay, good. So that's all I have. Any questions that I can answer?
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments of the applicant? Okay, my screen. Commissioner Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My understanding of the licensing from the state for child care centers is it's based on two different things. It's based on square footage of the facility, and it's based on the age of the children. And it has to do with the ratio of caregivers to the children. You have
correct.
Infants
correct.
require higher ratio of
Than
caregivers.
5-year-olds, exactly.
And toddlers, you can have more kids in a room and that sort of thing.
Correct.
So have you already applied to the state, and have they been out and designated by room how many kids are allowed in each room? Because that would give us a better indication.
Commissioner Lewis, if I can jump in situations where you could have infants, meaning children less than 1 year of age, or children above 1 year of age, the higher standard is what's done for the entire center. If you were strictly 0 to 1, it's 25 square feet per infant. If you have a mix, it goes to that 35 square feet, the larger amount per child, should there be a range.
That's the city's
This is strictly
standard,
the
or is
Arizona
that the
Department of
DHS?
Health Service, yes, DHS. The city has no standards regarding that.
Okay, so DHS standard is saying they could do a maximum of 39 children if they were of that highest ratio, meaning older kids.
And younger kids. The children that are 0 to 1 year of age require 25 square feet. If you have a mix of 0 to 1 or 1 and above, it goes to 35 square feet for everyone. So regardless of if they're infants or larger.
And that's what I'm trying to calculate in my head. I'm not sure how we got to 39 in such a small space.
Sure. So the max size of 1365 of usable classroom space. So
Right.
minus hallways, minus restrooms, minus the kitchen. These are all the rooms that are used for the care of children. The 1365 square feet divided by 35 square feet per participant comes to the 39 total. And that's, again, maximum capacity, which we're not expecting.
Okay. And that's per the state's requirements
That's
for
correct.
this facility?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Commissioner Bolnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm trying to get a feel for whether our view is that it's only been 4. In the past, we know there's been more. I'm just trying to get a feel for what the neighborhood's experienced in the past, because I haven't seen anything about any complaints about what's been going on there. And so I'm curious, what's the maximum number of children that have been there over the past couple of years that could have been a nuisance to the people around?
I just got involved with the client 10 months or so ago, so I can't answer that question personally.
Fair enough.
Yeah, if you could come to the podium, please, and state your name and address, please, and you can absolutely comment.
Good afternoon. My name is Madeline Akers, and for the daycare, we've had between 14 and 16 when we were fully licensed.
Ma'am, may I get your
Thank you.
address for the record, please? I'm
Yes.
sorry.
7337 West Alexandria Way, Peoria, Arizona, 85381.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Commissioner Allstott, you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. Forgive me if I read the site plan incorrectly, but it looked like there was to be improvements to a bridge that went over a small canal as well as a fire hydrant. Is that something that will be constructed before the license is approved?
I'll let Randy, Randy apparently is going to answer that.
Commissioner Alsop, that is correct. So all on-site improvements and interior to the building, including the fire sprinklers within the building, would need to be done, permitted, constructed, and finalized prior to that number raising above 4 children.
Okay, thank you.
I had a couple of questions. The report we received from staff mentions the fact that the applicant holds Friday night prayer service. Can I ask what time that service typically starts?
7 o'clock.
At 7 p.m. Okay. And the report also stated that the church has occasional meetings during the week in the evening hours. I'm not sure, it wasn't defined what days. Is that referring to the Friday evening services, or do you have other services during the week? Would you mind coming up to the podium? I'm sorry. Yeah. You're going to get your exercise tonight, aren't you?
I need it. Usually on Tuesday night, we would have a service like a Wednesday night Bible study, but ours would be on Tuesday night. Generally right now, our prayer meetings, we do a conference call because it's easy for everybody getting off work and not having to travel. So we've done that and negated the Friday night prayer services.
Okay, so you don't typically have people traveling into the center on the, okay, that's what I need. Thank you.
Okay.
We do not have any speaker request forms on this, so I'm going to ask one more final question. Are you in agreement with staff's recommendations in the report?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to be closing the public hearing then, since we have no speaker forms. We still do not have any. Is that correct? All right. Thank you. Any comments from the commissioners before we vote? My apologies. Commissioner Lewis. What was that? Oh, you're making a motion. I'm sorry. Did you want to make a comment, Commissioner Patterson?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. What would be the process for modifying the condition 4 to change that to 20 instead of 39?
I'm going to seek counsel from our attorney, Mr. Berg, on that.
Mr. Chair, someone could make a motion. What I heard was discussing stipulation number or condition number 4. And I don't know whether staff had looked into this. It might be as simple as shortening it to say the daycare center shall not exceed a maximum occupancy of 20 children, period. So if someone made that motion and it was seconded, that could be a vote. If the motion carried, then you could do a second motion to approve the entire item.
Perfect. Thank you. Was that clear?
Yes, and I'd like to make that motion to change condition 4 to a maximum of 20, 20 as opposed to 39.
We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Bolnick has seconded that motion. Okay. So now we have to vote on in its entirety, as I understand, right? Okay. Do I have a motion on the revised?
Mr. Chair, to speak clear, not the entirety, just on this motion. So to amend this condition.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do that.
Thank
and
you for
if
clarifying.
passes,
I'm
then
getting
we'll
ahead of
do a
myself.
separate one.
We're now going to vote on the motion to limit to 20 the number of children. Okay. Go ahead and vote.
I'm not sure what we're voting on.
Okay. All right. For clarification, would you mind restating the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. My motion is to amend condition number 4, which currently limits the maximum occupancy to 39, and replacing the 39 with 20.
And also removing the language referencing the state of Arizona licensing requirements. So it will simply state that the maximum occupancy is 20 children.
Right. We have a motion and a second on that. Commissioner Lewis, are you clear on that? Is your question answered? Okay. All right, so we're going to vote on the motion now. Will everybody please vote? And it's unanimous. All right.
So now, Mr. Chairman, if someone wanted to, they could make a motion to approve the item as amended.
Well, do I have a motion now on the case?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Lewis.
I make a motion that we approve case number CU 150015 based on the conditions listed and the amendment.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Lewis. Do I have a second? It looks like Commissioner Patterson.
Second.
Thank you. Please vote. And we have unanimous approval of that. Thank you. The next agenda item is 6R GPA 16-0003, Assured Self-Storage, and ZR Z16-0009, Assured Self-Storage. Staff, please present your report.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Cody Gleason. I'm a planner with the City of Peoria Planning and Community Development Department. I'm going to apologize in advance in case I sneeze during the presentation. The items before you tonight are GPA 16-0003, General Plan Amendment, and a rezone request, Z16-0009. They are items 6R and 7R, respectively. The case you have before you is brought to you by the applicant VLC Enterprises. Their location is northwest of the northwest corner of 85th Avenue in Northern, which is just west of 83rd, which is kind of off the screen there. Item 6R, GPA 16-0003, is a general plan amendment request to transition the general plan land use from low-density residential to neighborhood commercial. The subsequent rezoning request, item 7R, is Z16-0009, which is a request to rezone from the existing C1, which is convenience commercial, and AG, which is general agricultural, to PAD, or planned area development zoning. As you can see here, there's really two components to this application, especially as far as the zoning request. There is a storage component on the west side of the development, and then, as you can see, a single-family component on the east side of the development that abuts 85th Avenue. Here I wanted to draw a distinction between the two applications for you. The general plan amendment is only for 7.5 acres of the overall development. It is not the entire development. The reason for that is the general plan amendment would only be modifying the land use category for the storage component of the development. As referenced, it would be going from low-density residential to neighborhood commercial. And then, as you can see, the rezone request would be for 12.2 acres, or the entirety of the site. Again, that site is currently zoned C1, convenience commercial, and AG, general agricultural, and the proposed rezoning would be to planned area development, or PAD. Some of the context to draw your attention to here, to the immediate west of this site, you have the Brighton Charter School. To the north, you have an approximately 325-foot SRP power line corridor. To the east of a portion of the site and south of a portion of the site, you have a city-owned retention basin, and then across 85th Avenue, you have single-family residential within the county, and those are currently zoned RU43, or essentially 1-acre lots within the county. The general plan amendment, as referenced, really transitions to something that is in context with the built environment around the site. As I referenced, to the west you have the charter school, to the east and south the city-owned retention, north that power line corridor. And this amendment kind of brings it together with the existing zoning of C1. Again, it would be transitioning if approved by the city council. However, it's an attempt to provide that appropriate relation for the existing zoning as well as the intended zoning, and then what is built around the environment. The intent of the neighborhood commercial land use is to provide developments that are architecturally, as far as style and scale, in context with its surroundings, and to provide limited convenience-oriented establishments that serve their immediate neighborhood. So in this situation, you again have that school to the west. So you don't have what is currently designated as low-density residential. Even though it contains that designation, the existing environment surrounding it does not represent that land use category. As far as the specifics for the rezoning, I referenced the existing zoning for the site. And again, the context conditions. What the rezoning request does is it provides a transition between various uses within the area. Again, to the east of 85th Avenue, you have the single-family residential 1-acre lots. This proposal would then provide single-family residential abutting 85th Avenue with an enhanced intervening street frontage landscaping area. It would then transition to the mini storage, so you'd be going from those large lot residential to a somewhat smaller lot residential, and then ultimately the non-residential that would abut the school use. As I referenced, the street frontage landscaping along 85th Avenue would be an enhancement to the standards that are identified within the PAD. So really the focus of the PAD standards were the context of the surrounding area. With that increased landscaping frontage along 85th, they were attempting to provide a transition, even though it's single family to single family, their understanding of the larger lots, and they wanted to provide somewhat of a buffer between those larger lots and the somewhat smaller lots that are being proposed with this development. With that, there is also an intervening open space area proposed by the applicant between the proposed single family and the mini storage that would consist of 80 feet in between the single family and the mini storage use. So it provides open space for the single family development as well as kind of a buffer between the homes and that non-residential use of the storage. As you can see here, I apologize, the clicks aren't working with me here. For Northern Avenue, the typical landscaping that you would find with the existing zoning would be 15 feet. The PAD proposes no change to that. For single-family residential, the typical standard between C1 and single-family residential would be 30 feet. In this instance, I may have referenced landscape standards. I intended to say development standards. So the setback would be 30 feet rather than what is proposed by the PAD. The reason for that reduction between the single family and the mini storage is that buffer that would otherwise be provided is accommodated by the single family portion of the development, and it's occupied by the open space for that single family development. The
setback from the retention area that's currently owned by the city would be 0. The reason for that is a portion of the retention area is actually still C1, and then it transitions to ag, approximately where you have the break between the two uses. So where you would have 0, the applicant has proposed 8 feet along the highlighted area in C, and then 50 feet as you get to the southern portion of the storage component. What that does is provide spacing, as you'll see on the next slide, for landscaping within that area, and provides a good context when you're driving down Northern. Instead of seeing just a large expanse of masonry wall, you would see landscaping in front of that wall, and it provides a substantial area, especially in the case of the 50 feet for that visual. To the north, you would otherwise have a 20-foot setback requirement with the power lines, simply because they are zoned single-family residential. In this instance, we're trying to avoid that. So in order to accommodate not creating a dead space between the power line corridor and the proposed development that one day could be walled off into an undesirable area, we felt it would be better to provide a 0 setback from that point, as it would not serve any benefit to the community or the development itself. The height transition that you see here is for C1, you would be limited to 30 feet. The PAD references C2 standards where they're not specifically identified. So in this case, height is one of those that's not specifically identified within the PAD, and it would refer back to C2. That 48-foot height limit does come with a step back provision if it is adjacent to the property line. So for each foot that they would have to locate next to the property line, they would start at 30 feet and then step back as they continue further into the property to where they could ultimately be at 48 feet. Here we have the landscape standards for the storage portion. Again, from Northern, there's no change from the single-family residential. For the storage portion, you would not have a standard. It would typically be 30 feet, but again, that buffer requirement is being placed on the single-family residential, and that also helps accommodate the open space in that single-family residential. The difference referenced in the retention area development standards will be entirely occupied by landscaping. So again, you will have that visual as you drive westbound along Northern, or if you're really distracted and you're driving eastbound looking north. The power line corridor, again, we wanted to avoid a boundary condition that could create an undesirable area. So that was reduced from the typical 20 feet to 0 for that perimeter location. Here we have the standards for the single-family residential component of the development. The only change to the development standards within the single-family component is a reduction in the lot width. The lot width that's required by a typical R110 zoning district, which is what most of the development standards refer to within the PAD, is 70 feet. The PAD proposes a change or a reduction in that to 60 feet. So each lot within the single-family component would be required to be 60 feet wide instead of 70. As far as the landscape standard changes, the proposal, as you can see here, the typical standard would be 30 feet. The PAD proposes an 80-foot area. That would encompass their open space requirement as well and provide a community space for the development, within the PAD, as you may have seen, there are requirements for items such as a ramada and barbecue, so that there is amenities for the residents of that single-family development. For item B, as you can see, the street frontage landscaping for the typical R110 development would be 8 feet along 85th Avenue there. In this situation, the applicant, again, in an attempt to provide a transition between the 1 acre lots to the east and the proposed approximately 10,000 square foot lots, they are proposing to increase that from 8 feet to 30 feet. Notice was provided in accordance with the zoning ordinance standards, so postcards were sent out to all property owners within 600 feet of the property, as well as HOAs within 1 mile. The site was posted in accordance with city requirements. 1 phone call was received by staff and 1 email was received by the applicant, who then forwarded that to city staff. That inquiry or concern was merely in regards to a potential roadway improvement that was not related to the project, but in the area. At the neighborhood meeting held on November 3rd, there were approximately 7 residents in attendance. The primary concerns of the residents at that meeting were the size of the single-family home lots, as far as the transition from the 1 acre lots to the approximately 10,000 square foot lots. Their concern with that was regarding any property value diminution if we were to allow lots less than a ½ acre in comparison to those lots across 85th Avenue and then also south of Northern. Concerns were identified regarding traffic generated from the 12 single-family home lots on 85th Avenue. And then concerns were also brought up regarding Northern Avenue improvements and how that would impact 85th Avenue and accessibility to 85th Avenue. At the meeting, it was identified, and in further responses to those inquiries, it was identified to the citizens that there was no intention of shutting down 85th Avenue access to Northern, which was a lot of the concern. And then there was no intention of creating a connection for 85th Avenue underneath the power lines. In regards to the findings for the general plan amendment, item 6R, staff feels that the land use would allow for a development that is contextually appropriate with the scale and intensity of the area. The amendment better reflects the development needs of the area and is in conformance with the goals, objectives, and policies of the City of Peoria General Plan. Additionally, it would not have an adverse impact on the surrounding community. Separately, the rezoning request, item 7R, staff feels that it would be in conformance with the goals and objectives of the general plan. Additionally, in context with the related general plan amendment, GPA 160003, the rezoning request would better reflect the development needs of the surrounding area, especially as it relates to context with those boundary conditions that I referenced previously. As a result, staff recommends that the commission make 2 separate actions. One on item 6R, GPA 160003, recommend approval to the City Council as proposed. And item 7R, the rezoning request, Z160009, that the commission recommend approval of that case to the City Council, subject to the conditions identified in the staff report, as well as the amended memo that was received by the commission.
Thank you for your report, Mr. Gleason. Do we have any? Yes, we have one commissioner who wants to speak. A couple. All right. Commissioner Lusky, you're first up.
Yes, quick question just to clarify. We mentioned the 48-foot rule on PAD, but it was based on 1 foot and you went from 30 up. So from what I'm seeing, there's really no 48-foot or even close to that allowed in this storage area.
I don't believe the applicant has an intent to go that high. As far as the allowance, I would have to scale out the capability of the site, particularly the storage component, to see if there's spacing to even reach that extent.
Okay. And back, kind of a follow-up, the school, any idea of the height of the school next to it?
Oh, the Brighton School?
Yeah.
I'm not aware of the overall height of that. I believe it is all 1 story.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bolnick, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought I read somewhere in the package that access was not going to occur from the single family to the storage. And I see in this drawing that there appears to be a road from the cul-de-sac into the storage. Did I misunderstand that, or is there going to be a way to travel off of 85th Avenue into the storage?
Commissioner Bolnick, the access that you see there would be emergency access only, so it would be solely reserved for fire access. It goes through the open space of the single-family residential portion off of the cul-de-sac, but again, it's solely for fire department access, and it would be paved with a material that's appropriate for landscaping while being able to accommodate the appropriate loads for the fire engine.
Excellent. Thank you.
Do I have any other questions from Commission? Not showing up there, but that's okay. Commissioner Lewis?
Thank you. I'm just kind of following up with that too. You might have covered it in. I'm trying to visualize that buffer between the single family and the storage, how that's going to actually look. You explained what that was. There's going to be an emergency fire access there, and it's going to be landscape. What's going to actually divide the two properties?
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioner Lewis. The area that would be dividing the two properties would be landscaping and open space area. So it would be an area exclusively for landscaping, and then the amenities identified within the open space requirements of the PAD. So items such as a ramada, barbecue, and then trees, shrubs, the typical landscaping.
Will there be a wall dividing those properties?
Chairman, Commissioner Lewis, that's correct. There would be a wall for the storage component. The exterior of the storage component is entirely surrounded by a CMU wall of varying materials and style in order to incorporate aesthetics into the wall.
There would have to be a gate there then for fire access, I assume, right?
That is correct.
On that particular side?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners have any questions? Did you have?
Yeah,
Sorry.
just
Yes,
a quick one.
Commissioner Lusky?
The entrance to 85th off of Northern, will there be any modifications to the ingress and egress in and out of there?
Chairman, Commissioner Lusky, there are no intended modifications to the 85th Avenue and Northern intersection with this improvement. In regards to Northern Avenue Parkway improvements, I would defer to our city traffic engineer.
Okay. Because the one concern I guess I would have is with the additional 12 homes, you are going to see increased traffic there. And unfortunately, I couldn't get down there this week to take a look at that, getting in and out of there. So I was just, that would be the concern I have is with the increased traffic, will that be sufficient?
If you'd like, I can defer to our assistant city traffic engineer to answer
Perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Nelson and Commissioners. I'm Chris Lonka. I'm the Assistant City Traffic Engineer in the Engineering Department. To answer your question, Commissioner, as far as restricted access to the storage and 85th Avenue, there's no intent to put a raised median or any turning restrictions for this particular project. In regards to the Northern Parkway, And I'm not sure if you guys are privy to the Northern Parkway, but it's a multi-year, multi-jurisdictional project that spans from Loop 303 to 67th Avenue. In this area, the only thing that's programmed, which means it's funded through 2026, is intersection improvements at the major intersections, which will be 91st, 83rd Avenue, 75th, and 67th. In between, there's nothing programmed as far as roadway improvements or medians or anything like that. So that goes through 2026. As we move forward past 2026, we will look at different options for Northern Parkway, what makes sense, what's a parkway looking. We'll have to work with the residents and the other constituents in the area as far as access. Does it make sense to provide full turning limit access at this location, or is it better to push them at another location and look at U-turns? We haven't done that work yet because it's just simply not funded. It'd be premature to go that route. Are there any other questions?
Commissioner Lewis, you have a question?
Thank you. Can I just follow up real quick? I don't know if you have an opinion on this, but my unsubstantiated opinion of these types of facilities is they don't generate a lot of traffic. People go put their stuff in a storage unit and they may not come back for weeks or months at a time. So it's not like a commercial place where you have people coming in and out all day long, that sort of thing. From traffic engineering, do you guys see the same thing or not?
Chairman Nelson and Commissioner Lewis, that's absolutely correct. A storage facility is one of the lowest trip generators we can actually put on a site. So I would expect very minimal traffic impacts with this type of land use.
Thank you.
I don't see any other requests to speak from the commission. Did I miss anybody? All right, thank you. I've opened the public hearing for both cases. However, as has been pointed out, we're going to need to vote on each one of these separately. Is the applicant present tonight?
Yes, sir.
Do you wish to speak?
No, sir.
You do not. Okay. Are you in agreement with staff recommendations?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay.
The only thing of any elevation is the office apartment, which is 29 feet.
Okay, thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments of the applicant? I see none. All right. I'm now going to close the public hearing. Any comments from the commissioners before we vote on GPA 16-0003? All right. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Lewis.
I make a motion that we recommend approval of case GPA 16-0003 to the City Council as proposed.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Do I have a motion?
I'll second that.
I'm sorry. Do I have a second to the motion? Do I have a motion? Thank you, Commissioner Lusky. All right. Let's please vote. And it is unanimous. Do we have any comments from commissioners before we vote on our next issue, Z16-0009? Seeing none, do I have a motion for Z16-0009? Commissioner.
I make a motion that we recommend approval of case Z16-0009 to the City Council, subject to the conditions in the staff report 1 through 9.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll go ahead and second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Lusky. Let's vote. And it too is unanimous. Thank you. All right, our last item we will be taking action on tonight is item 8R, election of officers. Discussion and possible action to elect officers for the Planning and Zoning Commission for 2017. Is there a staff report related to this?
Good evening, Chair Nelson, members of the Commission. Melissa Sigmund with the Planning Division. So yes, our last item for discussion is the election of officers. As you know, every year we do elect the commission elects officers, including the chair, vice chair, and secretary. First order, we'd like to extend our appreciation for the members who've served in this past term, as it obviously is always crucial to the commission's function. So as you see here, these are the members who have currently served and recently served, and based on that, we've compiled the eligible candidates. Every members are allowed to serve in any given position for up to 2 terms, and so the commission members listed here have not yet served out any of the terms for those positions. I believe in the past we've taken votes for each position separately, and so with that, we take any questions, or you can make a motion.
So just for my clarification, we are not to nominate a slate of officers. We have to nominate and vote on these individually. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that. All right. Do I have any nominations for the position of, does it matter which order we start with, I should ask? No, it doesn't matter. Okay, let's start with chairperson. Do I have any nominations for the position of chair?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Commissioner Bolnick, you have a question?
I'm just curious about seniorities, of who's been on for how long,
Okay, Sean, can you answer that?
who's the most senior, and who's second and third.
Sean is the most senior, I can tell you that, of ones in that group.
In that group?
It would be Sean and then Jeff and then
Jeff.
Jay.
And Jeff, okay, thank you.
Just from being here for a few years, I can tell you that.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I wasn't sure who came first. All right. Does that answer your question, Commissioner? Are you good? Okay. All right, so again, the chair will ask, do we have any nominations for chairman of the commission? Commissioner Lewis.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Sean Hutchinson as chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Bolnick. We have a motion and a second to nominate Commissioner Sean Hutchinson as chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the coming year. Please vote. And it is unanimous.
That'll teach him not to be here tonight.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy, it sure will. All right. Very good. On to the next position. All right. Do I have any nominations for the position of vice chair?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Lewis.
I'd like to nominate Jeff Nelson for the position of vice chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Do I have a second to that?
That I can second.
Thank you, Commissioner Lusky. We have a motion and a second to nominate Jeff Nelson as vice chair for 2017. Let's please vote. And that too is unanimous. Very good. All right. And our final position to fill tonight is secretary. Do we have any nominations from the commission for the position of secretary?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Lewis.
I would like to nominate Jay Otluski for the position of secretary.
Thank you. We have a motion to nominate Commissioner Jay Otluski for his position of secretary. Do we have a second to that motion? Commissioner...
I guess I'll second that one.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Bolnick has seconded that motion. Let's please vote. And that is unanimous as well. Very good. Thank you all for that.
Both February.
All right. Are there any, I'm going to do a call to the public. Are there any comments from the public on non-agenda items tonight? Do we have any speaker forms? No? Okay. Seeing that there are no comments on non-agenda items, we're going to turn next to reports from staff. Does staff have anything to report or state tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission. Just 2 things. One, we will not be having a meeting in February. We'll move to the first meeting in March. I don't know the date off the top of my head. I think it's the 2nd, March 2nd. But more notably, tonight you may notice some changes up here. Commissioner Bolnick has moved from alternate position to a full-time commissioner. And in his place, Clay Alsop has taken our role as the alternate. So I think most of you, if not all of you, have already met him tonight, but we really appreciate his participation. And at some point, we may be seeing him up there in one of the full-time chairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you. Do we have any, is that all from staff? Okay, thank you for that. Next item is reports from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Do any commissioners have anything to report or state? I see none. Okay. I do have a quick question. The Boards and Commissions Appreciation Night, I haven't seen any communication on that. Are we still planning to do that this year? And if so, do we have an idea when that date would be?
Members of the Planning Commission, Chair Jeff Nelson, the Boards and Commission Subcommittee met earlier this week, and I believe they're looking at a date in February. We can get you the specific date. I believe they intend on sending out an email soon. But it's in later February. It's going to be at the Arizona Broadway Theater. And I believe the entertainment they have this year is a cover band for Billy Joel and Elton John. So it should be a nice night.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for that. The city always does just a superb job of putting that together, and we really appreciate it. And looking forward to this year's event, so thank you for that. All right, and with that, seeing no further business, I call this meeting adjourned.